All right, welcome to TCOYD Live. We're talking about the latest diabetes device updates that you need to know. And there has been a ton of updates since the last time we've talked about this. Like we actually had you here about a year ago. But four kind of main categories. So first, advances and continuous glucose monitoring. And again, there's been some very recent updates, even like this week. We're going to talk about continuous ketone monitoring. So we'll get into what that is, but basically measuring ketones continuously. The hybrid closed loop systems that are available, the automated insulin delivery systems, there's actually 5 of these on the market now. So we're going to go through all 5 of those. And then actually these developments in dual hormone systems that use insulin and glucagon. So who am I? I'm Dr. Jeremy Pettis. Work here at TCOYD along with my good friend and colleague,
Steve Edelman.
And we're joined today by, do you want to introduce our guest?
Yeah, our good friend and colleague and former fellows, Dr. David Ahn, who is a technology guru, and we're happy to have him.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. It's always fun being with you guys.
And where are you located?
So I'm in Newport Beach, California. I'm the Chief of Diabetes Services for the Marion Dick Allen Diabetes Center for Hoag Hospital.
Yeah, cool. And so like Steve said, we've known David for a long time, but he's really created a niche in like diabetes technology and kind of the go-to resource for everything that we're talking about today. So he's the guy. And as we were preparing kind of like the bullets that we wanted to go through, I was learning a lot just talking to David and you too, Steve. So let's get into it. So I kind of listed those bullet points, but the first big category is just going to be on continuous glucose monitors. And I wasn't kidding that literally this week, there was 2 big updates, one from Dexcom, one from Medtronic. So let's start with Dexcom. David, you want to tell us about what that was?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is that they announced, or they just got FDA approval of their 15-day system. So it's the G7 15-day. And they announced kind of the details of that. A lot of things to talk about. So one is that it won't actually launch until later this year, which I actually think is a good thing because what they're trying to do is make sure they have all their pump partners lined up, integrated, so that when it finally comes out on the market, they don't have to worry about people, knowing whether their pump is compatible or not. So they're kind of trying to get their ducks in a row before it comes out in the fall. So, or second half of this year. So, yeah.
I can add that what we were talking about beforehand was, for those of you that are using the G7, the 10.5 day, you don't have to worry that it's going to stay there. And I think people don't realize the integration is not easy.
It's going to be available until they can get on the 15-day.
Yeah. So they don't have to worry about them discontinuing it. And people don't realize how tough the integration is. It is difficult. It's expensive. You have to have a lot of IT. You got to work with the pump company. So, people always say, well, gee, why can't I just hook on to my new pump? It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I mean, and that is so important because like when the G7 first came out, I mean, we had conversations with patients all the time. Don't switch yet. It doesn't work with the Tandem yet or the Omnipod or whatever it might be. So that's an important thing. And then I asked you this 10 minutes ago, but I think this is important to people to hear. So yes, it lasts longer. That's great, right? We want things to last longer and that's always nice. But are there any other differences, accuracy, algorithm, anything like that?
So the algorithm, so the hardware is the same as the G7. But the algorithm used to kind of interpret the signal from the sensor to give you an actual glucose value, that has been tweaked and updated a little bit. So and that leads to improved accuracy. So there's a slight improvement in accuracy with the G7 15-day system. And the MARD, which is our conventionally accepted measurement of accuracy, is 8.0%, which is the lowest ICGM that's available on the market. So it's ever so slightly more accurate.
Okay. And Dexcom is always working on the connectivity issue. Every pump is different. So, they don't want people complaining that they lose signal. So they're working on that too, to make that even better than before.
And, something I didn't ask you, and maybe maybe you don't. So you can wear it longer. Did they have to make it more adhesive-y or anything like that?
So the adhesive is the same as the current version of the G7.
Wait a second. It comes with a little swab of honey. You put on your arm. I'm kidding.
So the adhesive is the same as the current iteration of the G7, but very observant users might have noticed that the adhesive in the G7 has actually evolved over time. So a lot of people actually say it's really sticky now because in the beginning, I think there were a lot of complaints that it was falling off. So it's the same adhesive as the current iteration of the G7, and they're still undergoing continued testing with their adhesive product. So yeah, they're very aware of that issue.
And the G7 comes with an extra cover up, which I think is nice.
Yeah, like I always use that, just because you just don't want it to fall off. But so adhesive, like being really sticky is one thing. You have patients on the other side that as it gets more sticky, they have, they're prone to rashes and things like that. So you always have to see like if you can tolerate it. But so that's nice. We got a longer Dexcom G7 essentially. So Medtronic, for a long time, they've had a CGM that just like, they get credit for essentially being the first, but like by today's standard, it's a little bit antiquated that you have a separate transmitter, you have to charge it, doesn't last as long, all these things. So they just announced that the system called the Simplera, their new CGM, is just gotten FDA approval. It's been available in Europe for a little bit now. So David, you want to tell us about Simplera, what it does?
Simplera is really exciting because, like Jeremy was saying, it really is kind of it brings the CGM Medtronic offerings kind of to where the market is right now. And it basically is a single piece. So there's no separate transmitter that you have to charge. It's fully disposable. It lasts 7 days, very similar to the Guardian 4. And it's zero calibration like all the other, the Libre and Dexcoms on the market. So I think it's going to be really exciting, really popular among Medtronic users because it kind of fills really the only gap in the Medtronic offering right now. So that's going to be really exciting for people.
And that supposedly be available more this fall. And then in addition to Medtronic having their own Simplera sensor that you can use with their pump, they're also supposed to integrate with the Libre this year, which is kind of a big deal because Medtronic has always done their everything in-house, their pump, their sensor. Yeah. And if you're a Medtronic person, you had to be on that combo. So to extend and get more CGM options, you'll see kind of a theme of this talk is that's where this technology is moving, of locking people into systems less and more, okay, I want this CGM and I want this pump, which is, to be honest, what we ideally would have from the beginning, but it's just taken a while to get there.
Yeah, what you said last year when we did the same live was that what you're hoping for is you pick your pump, you pick your CGM, and you marry them. Mm-hmm. And we're not tied to the system. So I think we've come a long way since last year, actually. So
definitely, yeah. So whatever that Libre product comes out, Medtronic users will have a choice of two great CGM options: the Simplera, which is directly made by Medtronic, or the Libre product, which is they've kind of announced it's going to be some sort of variant of the Libre, right, but manufactured and kind of distributed by Medtronic. So we're not exactly sure what that's going to look like, but it's going to be the Libre 3 Plus technology inside, which is a great sensor. So more choices, it's always better.
Yep. And we'll talk about this more when we get into the pumps, but like you said, it's really brought Medtronic back into the conversation of which pump should I be on, which is the best for me. And we'll get to that in the pump, but the CGM is such an important part of that. Now, if you have a couple kind of like realistic options, that's great.
It's the backbone of these systems, basically.
You always say that.
Well, yeah, because it's important.
That's actually the first time I've heard you say it. But
we hang around a lot together.
All right, so Dexcom, 15 days. Medtronic, big news, and a couple sensors there. A system that we've talked about quite a bit at TCOYD, but just doesn't get a lot of press publication, is the Eversense sensor, which is completely different. Real quick background: it's an implantable, tiny little sensor. It's literally this big. That's generally put in the
subcutaneous tissue
in this area. And you do have to wear a little patch over it every day to transmit to your phone. But once it's in there, it can last up to a year now, which is a big deal. And that there's data that this, has excellent product survivability. 92% of people kind of make it to this full year. So a great option for people that don't want to change their CGM all the time. You can take off the patch and, if you want to go to the beach or whatever, and you don't want to have your CGM on, and then as soon as you put it back on, it starts transmitting again. Also, I found it's a really good option for people that do have the adhesive issues, because you can take this patch on and off like daily. It's much less stickiness that people seem to tolerate it a lot better. So it's something that people to be aware of. There is an implantable year-long sensor.
Yeah, well, we did some videos on it too. I think it's important to say that.
We had David come and implant you.
Yeah, it's right here. And
Steve got implants.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important for everyone to know that they have the I designation, meaning that they can interoperability, and they're working on a pump partner. So I think most of the people using it now are people that are on MDI and people with type 2 that are not on the pump.
Yeah. And that'll be a big deal. I mean, because we need to partner these systems. So if Eversense works all of a sudden with whoever, then it becomes even a more viable option.
Yeah.
And just when it comes to, having choices, what I love about Eversense is it's such a different type of choice, right? Like the Simplera, the Libre, the Dexcom, they're fantastic, but they're kind of variations on the same theme. Whereas Eversense is almost like a different genre of CGM. Some people will really like it. Some people may not, but that's why it's so important to have options for the skin sensitive people. So yeah. And just the fact that you can take it off and put it back on whenever you want,
Yeah.
that's pretty unique for a CGM.
So check out our videos on our website where David literally did these implants right over there. And it went well. I was there for emotional support. I did a really good job.
And yeah, he really did it right on our stage. And when he actually put it in, I was saying, "Oh God, I hope it doesn't hurt," and it did not. So
you were worried about looking tough.
Well, and David you already put in like over 200 of them.
Yeah, I think it's like closer to 400. It might have passed 400.
Yeah, it's a short procedure in the office.
All right, so now let's move to the kind of over-the-counter options. So you may have heard about this update, but semi-recently you can get continuous glucose monitors now over the counter, which it is a big development. Personally, I think this is also long overdue. I mean, how long have you been able to buy a blood glucose meter, over the counter? So finally getting these options. And I would say globally, these are, kind of options for people that can't get them covered through insurance. Generally speaking, to get a CGM covered, you have to be on insulin, whether you're type 1 or type 2. So if you're on insulin, then for God's sakes, use your insurance and get this covered. But if you're not, and you want to use a CGM every once in a while or continuously, or if you don't even have diabetes and you just want to see how your intermittent fasting is going or your yoga program is affecting your blood sugar, whatever it might be, this is really opening the door to kind of glucose in terms of general health as well as for people with diabetes. So tell us about some of the over-the-counter options.
For sure. So Dexcom has a product called the Stelo, which is kind of a similar hardware to the G7, but it's a little bit focused towards people not using insulin. So one thing I should say about both of these over-the-counter options I'll talk about is they do not have alerts. So that's a big difference. So for people with type 1 diabetes, maybe in a pinch or an emergency, these can kind of substitute, but those alerts are really important for people with type 1 diabetes and insulin users, which is why these are kind of more geared towards people without not requiring insulin. So they don't have alerts, but the Stelo does have something called spike detection, which is pretty interesting. So instead of telling you kind of when you've hit a certain number as like a high alert, maybe after you've peaked, it will kind of say and nudge the user and say, hey, you just had a glucose spike. What do you think might have caused it? Stress, food, and it kind of forces the user to kind of think about and kind of reflect on what might have happened. So
it's like when I follow Steve and I get a high alert, I text him after the fact. I'm like, what the hell did you do?
Yeah, there's a little thing that comes up on the screen of the Stelo and it says, what the hell did you eat?
In different wording, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's really focused on lifestyle modification to improve blood sugar control, whether you have diabetes, whether you don't. And that education component, I think, is so important. And similarly, the Lingo is the product made by Abbott, and it's kind of a variant on the Freestyle Libre 2. So it looks like a Freestyle Libre 2, but the user experience is very much geared towards kind of wellness and helping people, use stress, sleep, diet, and exercise to improve their blood sugar control. So as the whole world, I think, is kind of shifting their focus to chronic disease and metabolic health, I think these are really important tools, but also useful to people with diabetes.
Yeah.
Well, on one of our last Newsy News sections, we talked about the Aura Ring hooking up with Dexcom to start reading, not only heart rate and things like that.
It's an actual ring you wear, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like this,
it
actually.
does, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a little bit wider. Yeah, and they're hooking up with Dexcom to give glucose values as well. And a lot of these wellness clinics, like most folks don't have diabetes, they're giving them out as part of their whole package. And I think it's quite interesting for even people without diabetes to see their blood sugar spikes after, or I should say elevations after eating, exercise.
What caused it, all that. So David, I know people are thinking this generally, like how much ballpark is one of these over-the-counter sensors?
Good question. So both products are essentially like just under $100. So the Stelo is $99 per month for 2 sensors because it's actually a 15-day product. But if you use a subscription, if you subscribe, it's $89 a month, and you can actually cancel the subscription at any time. So literally you could just cancel right after. So yeah, $89 to $99, and then the Lingo is $99 a month.
Okay.
So yeah.
You know what, when you said none of them have alerts. I'm thinking about half my patients that said, I
Yes,
want one.
yeah.
It's
That is true.
All right, so this is a nice dovetail into you're talking about like kind of the user experience. So, you know, obviously there's a sensor component, but there's also the apps. So you wanted to talk about some updates in the app department.
Yeah. So in a way, the way I always think of CGM as like the iPhone, in the sense that CGM was kind of groundbreaking, just like the iPhone was. And if you think about the iPhone, right, the first 5-6 years, it was like every new iPhone, it was like a totally brand new product. And you're like, wow, it's shaped different, does crazy different things. But after a while, it was more just like software experiences, right? The iPhone hasn't really changed in the past like 5 years, but the apps, like the user experience continues to get better, and there's more functionality and things like that. And I think that's kind of where we are in the era of continuous glucose monitoring. And I think that's where Dexcom deserves a lot of credit. Their app experience is fantastic. They have a lot of really cool nuanced features like the delayed high alert feature and things like that. And Abbott was kind of lagging behind a little bit, but they just recently released a new app called Abbott by Libre by Abbott. And it's on the App Store now. And it actually is a single app that works with all 4 of the Libre products. So the Libre 2, 3, 2 Plus, and 3 Plus. So it's a single app. And it just has a much more updated user interface. So it just looks more modern.
Okay.
It's kind of like a facelift on top of their older product. It has a couple new features for Libre 3 users. So you now have the option to silence all alerts for up to 6 hours. That's something that's in the G7, but the Libre did not have that feature before. So that app brings that.
even the below 55.
I think it does, right? The G7 alert, I think you can snooze all alarms, which is why they cap it at that 6 hour
Got it.
cutoff. You can't snooze it for more than 6 hours. And so that I'm just more excited that now they have a single app. Hopefully they'll continue to add new software updates and new features over the next year or two.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So the next big category, so speaking of Abbott still, is I mentioned continuous ketone monitoring. So first of all, what are ketones? Well, they're essentially, long story short, something that's released into the bloodstream when you don't have enough insulin. So if we, our pumps fell out, we lost our infusion sets, pretty quickly our ketones would start to rise. They actually come from breaking down fat. And those are the things that can lead to DKA or diabetic ketoacidosis when they get, overtly high. So do we need to know what our ketones are all the time? Absolutely not. But it would be nice to be alerted when there's some kind of problem that your ketones are high and to help avoid DKA. And so Abbott is kind of leading the charge in this area where they are going to pair their current Libre, essentially the Libre 3, with the ability to measure ketones as well. And I haven't, played with this yet. It's not available yet. But the idea here is that you'll see your CGM and your glucoses like you normally would, but then you would only be alerted if your ketones got to a certain level. So, just kind of thinking it as what's an airbag that comes out of your car. It's only there like kind of in the cases of emergency. So this is a really cool kind of update because, if everything else being equal, if you're already using one of these devices, why not know if your ketones are high? Just, it happens when you're sick or when it's, people drink alcohol sometimes, or again, like I said, their infusion set falls out. It happens. So this is cool. Anything to add about that?
You go ahead, and then I'll say something.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always interesting to add new features. I think it's a kind of unexplored territory. We were kind of talking about it before that, the ketone sticks, right? It's kind of doing the same thing that those ketone sticks would do, where you urinate on them and see if you have ketones. But this would be measuring it on a continuous basis. But it really is kind of an unexplored territory. We don't really have, we don't have large data sets. I don't actually often prescribe these ketone strips to my patients unless they really ask for it. So I'm really curious to see how useful it is because we don't know yet. And so it's kind of exciting, but it's also a little bit of a black box.
Yeah, basically, most of you with type 1 out there had ketoacidosis when you were diagnosed. It's a pretty serious condition. You can commonly get put in the ICU for IV lines in, and it doesn't happen tremendously, but when it happens, it happens. And it also can occur, as one of you mentioned, when you get really sick and your insulin requirements go up and you don't keep up with them. And also the whole class of medications that a lot of type 1s are on and type 2s, SGLT inhibitors like Jardiance, Farxiga, and there's
Invocana.
Zynquista,
Yeah.
so Invocana, thank you. And they can increase the rate of ketoacidosis. And the thing about ketoacidosis is when you get to the point where you're nausea and vomiting, it's too late to do risk mitigation, take insulin, take fluids, take carbs at home, and prevent any visit to the emergency room. So this would allow people to be alerted well before they get to a critical level.
Yeah. And just to highlight that point, those drugs are fantastic meds. They are not approved for people with type 1 because they increase the risk of DKA. So the hope is that a device like this, a continuous ketone monitor, will kind of unlock this class of medications for folks like us to take safely and get the benefits of better glucoses, a little bit of weight loss. And by the way, they help protect your heart and kidneys, and type 1s can't take them. So I think that's where a lot of the excitement, at least in the type 1 space, comes from.
Yeah. Now, I always have to teach my fellows, David, the urine test measures acetoacetate, not the most important one, beta hydroxybutyrate. And I think you meant to say that they have glucose meters that measure glucose when you put a glucose strip in, but the ketone meter, which measures the right thing, but it's not continuous. And who wants to carry around a meter these days? That's like passe.
Yeah, I mean, you ask most type 1s, like, when's the last time you checked your ketones? They'll say either never or, 5 years ago, something like that. So it is a whole new era of a lot more data around ketones.
Yeah, we're gonna collect so much data. We don't know the ambient ketone levels in type 1s during exercise, during the meals we eat. And I think we'll learn a lot, and that's important.
All right, so we're gonna make a major shift now from kind of continuous monitoring ketones, glucose, to these hybrid closed loop systems, or these automated insulin delivery systems. And to kick this off, we are gonna go through, there's 5 available on the market, go through each of them. But the way we're gonna set this up is our most recent video we just did at TCOYD was where I was speed dating these different pumps. The idea being, I'm interested in a pump, and how do I know which one's best for me? So we did kind of a riff on that, where I was actually kind of like checking these pumps out in a speed dating format. So we're going to show you a little clip of that.
We'll come back to that a little bit later.
Oh, we're coming back to that a little bit later. But the whole video is available on our website now, but we'll come back to show that clip. So the first system that we're actually going to start with is the Medtronic system. The 780G. So it's always had numbers, like it was the 670G, now the 780G. And I think the most important thing we mentioned at the top is that it's going to be working with the new Simplera CGM. It's going to be working with the Libre to kind of bring the CGM component into the modern era with a pump that honestly has a very good kind of aggressive algorithm. Anecdotally, I think a lot of providers and patients will say it's one of the most aggressive or the most aggressive. It's a system that I'm personally using right now, and I've really liked, even when using this kind of antiquated CGM. I've kind of put up with this CGM, if you will, because I think the algorithm is so good. Some other advantages, I'll just reel out one that I actually think is a big deal that they don't talk about a lot, is they have an approved 7-day infusion set for the Medtronic system. And for me, every time I would change my infusion set every 3 days, like a good diabetic supposed to, that first day, was a real crapshoot. The absorption would be kind of off. It seems like it just took time for the pump to kind of kick in. And I would, to the point that on day 1, I'd carry around a pen or a syringe just to kind of troubleshoot that. So having to change less frequently is a big deal for me. And then also they've actually made upgrades in the tubing. That's something we don't talk about a lot at all, that, insulin can get adhered to the tubing and things like that. So it just seems to work kind of better for me.
On that note, I think it's really neat that the sensor is also a 7-day sensor. So you can actually change out your if you're able to get the full 7 days out of it, you can change your sensor and infusion set at the same time, which I know for other systems is, the stars have to align for you to be able to change your sensor and pump at the same time. So I don't know if that's been your experience.
Yeah, well, that was for the first week, and then I pushed the 7 days to 10 days. And
that's where real life comes in.
Well, everyone does that. David, I thought it'd be important, just briefly. We all talk about algorithms. The 780G, I tried it out. The algorithm was awesome, kept me in range. How would you describe what an algorithm is? Because someone asked me the other day, and I had the deer in the headlights.
Yeah, so I think of it's just kind of the brain that drives your insulin delivery. So if you think of automated insulin delivery as kind of the self-driving car, the algorithm is basically the controller, like the Tesla programming that is kind of making the decisions as to go faster or slow down, which is, you know, in the diabetes world, give more insulin or give less insulin.
Yeah, I had the experience of it being aggressive with the meal detection technology. I thought that was kind of a gimmick, but if you forget your bolus, it cranks in there and catches up for you. And so I was able to actually.
Steve tried it for a week or two also, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you say that already?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I wasn't.
That's all right.
Yeah.
But anyway, it took a lot of stress out of me dealing with diabetes on a day-to-day basis. I said, this thing's going to take care of me. I can forget it. And I also understand that if someone's using it that wants a set bolus for meals, they can predetermine that. So there are type 2s that use it, and make it easy for them as well too. So it's options. You can be super fastidious in all the different settings, or you can just let it do its thing.
So I'm being told now that we have the video ready. So without further ado, here is me on my speed dating date with Medtronic. Hi, I'm Jeremy. Medtronic, it's you.
Hey, Jeremy. Surprised to see me?
Well, yeah, honestly, I mean, gotta say, I'm kind of surprised to run into you here. I mean, yeah, we were together for a long time, but we broke up years ago.
Yeah, we did. And that was hard for me. But I listened and I heard what you said, and I did the work to make myself the best version of me possible. Because I want you back, Jeremy.
I don't know. I mean, you were my first pump, and I always love you, but have you really changed?
Yes, Jeremy. Pumps change, grow, evolve. For instance, I'll be coming out with a brand new CGM sensor this year, and I'll start working with the Abbott sensor too.
You mean?
Yep, I don't hang out with that CGM anymore who hurt you so much and who lied to you about how high and low you are.
Yeah, that guy was the worst. But I mean, I gotta say, a new sensor and working with the Libre, that's huge.
And did you hear that people are saying that I might have the best algorithm on the market? I can help you get super tight control and even have something called meal detection technology. So if you forget to bolus, like I know you do sometimes, I can help you stay in range.
We did have some good times together.
Also, I know you hated to change your infusion sets, so you can change mine every 7 days.
Gosh, Medtronic, I'm seeing you in like a whole new light. And it sounds like 2025 is gonna be a big year for you.
Yeah, it is. So give me a call sometime.
So there you have it. And like I said, we did all 5 systems, and they were all great. But you know, the Medtronic one, we just wanted to tease there for you. So check it out online. All right, so we're going to leave Medtronic behind, and the next one we're talk about is one that's not technically available yet, but is like, you know, the latest edition. It's called the Twist pump. So you want to tell us about the Twist?
So Sequel Twist, it should be launching in limited markets in the second quarter, so any day now of this year. And basically, it's a brand new pump concept invented by a guy who was actually one of the inventors of the original insulin pump in like the 80s. So he came back, and this is his sequel. And basically, he uses a different technology. It's like acoustic wave technology. We don't know what that means,
Sounds
but
cool.
we're excited to see how it works. But another really cool aspect about it is that it actually uses the loop algorithm. So you may have heard of loop kind of in the whispers of the crowd or the interwebs. But basically, Loop was an algorithm built by the community, so built by people with diabetes, and that got FDA approved finally. And so the Sequel Twist pump is pairing with the Loop algorithm. And the Twist pump, it's kind of like halfway in size between the Tandem T-Slim X2 and the Tandem Mobi, so it's pretty small and fully iPhone controlled. And the Loop has a lot of really neat features. We could do a whole ton on it, but very customizable. It's probably the most configurable of the algorithm. So if that's like your jam, I think the Twist is a pretty exciting option.
Yeah, it's small and holds 300 units, which is nice.
Yeah, and Steve's been looping for a long time with the Omnipod, and you like the interface. The like, you know, there is a lot of like things to toggle. So like you said, if you're into that, all the little like micro changes, that's for you. If that's like, you know, confusing or scary to you, then definitely not. But you really like it.
I like it because once your settings are set, then you don't have to mess around with it. So, you know, all these systems we're talking about are good, but you know, as we talk about in the speed dating video, you got to find the one that's right for you.
Yeah, there really is no best pump for everybody, that's for sure. All right, so moving on to Tandem. So in the video, again, we talk about the Tandem Control IQ and their newer edition, the Mobi, which is more like a patch pump. Some updates from Tandem. They actually integrate with the Libre sensor also, the Libre 2 Plus. So if you've been using the Dexcom forever and you want to try the Libre, that's an option for you now on the Tandem. And they also have this new Control IQ Plus kind of technology or update to the system, if you will. So tell us about what that is.
So Control IQ Plus is just like it sounds. It's some additions on top of Control IQ. There are a couple of settings changes to make it more adaptable for smaller, younger kids, and also patients who are a little heavier in size, because now they're FDA approved for type 2 diabetes. And it also, for people with type 1 diabetes especially, allows for an extended bolus up to 8 hours, and also has the ability to do temp basals on top of Control IQ, which is exciting. So if you need to kind of slightly make your basal rates a little bit more aggressive temporarily because you're a little bit more stressed out or something like that, or you're sick, then you can do a temp basal on top of Control IQ. And you can do that temp basal for up to 72 hours. Okay.
So those are the major updates from Tandem. And then the iLet, again, do a speed date with the iLet, is a system it's much more hands-off. That essentially when you start it, you enter your weight. When you eat, you can tell it, I'm eating a typical meal, slightly larger, slightly smaller. So it's the opposite of Loop in terms of there's really very few to zero toggles that you can do other than telling it that, you're eating. So for somebody that wants to be as hands-off as possible, this is, kind of a great option for them. The update there is that I've heard that their screens now, like a color screen that makes it easier, visibility, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you know what? It really has helped several of my patients that there's no carb counting, there's no insulin to carb ratio, there's no sensitivity factor. You just announce your meals and you go about your day, and they have some pretty good algorithms too. And these folks do pretty well. And to me, it's about the closest thing to a totally open artificial pancreas. If you didn't have to announce your meals, then you'd be there. So it's a different system, and folks like it.
Yeah. One thing I'll add is it's the only pump currently available that integrates with the Libre 3 Plus. So the Omnipod 5 and the Tandem integrate with the Libre 2 Plus, and the Sequel Twist, which we just talked about, when it launches, it will launch with the 3 Plus integration.
Okay.
A lot of pluses out there.
It's confusing. So again, it's confusing for practitioners too. So another reason why this is super important to arm yourself with this information. So when you go talk to your provider, it's well, actually, I want to go onto the Libre, even though I'm on a Tandem or Omnipod, because the chances are they don't know that. It doesn't mean they're a bad doctor. It's just a lot to keep up with. Yeah. The last one, number 5, is the Omnipod 5, which has been available for quite a while now. And I guess the biggest update there is that since it has been available for quite a while, it finally integrates with the iPhone now. And people have been asking about that since day one. And it's nice to have that.
Yeah, patients love that feature. Yeah. Right now, it still only integrates with the Dexcom G6. So if you use the PDM, you can use the G7 or the Libre 2 Plus. But if you're going to use your iPhone to control, it only works with the G6. But so many of my patients love it. They're willing to stick with the G6 because they love iPhone control, and they're really excited for G7 integration with iPhone control.
Yeah, I believe they're the first pump to get approved for officially approved by the FDA for type 2. Mm-hmm. Tandem followed them.
Yeah, that's right. And that's a big deal because they kind of opened that box.
And there's a lot of type 2s going on these systems for sure.
So, there's all 5 systems. And if you're thinking about going on a pump, pretty much all of them have some 30-day trial period, something like that, where you can literally try it for 30 days, turn it back in. If you don't like it, go back on MDI, try a different pump. So be aware of that, because a lot of times that's a major barrier for patients. I'm going to make this huge, jump to a pump, and I'm never going back. I'll never be the same person. You can try these things. On the other side, if you're already on one of these systems, the big thing is when your warranty or whatever comes up, that you might be locked in with insurance for a certain pump for a certain number of years. So be aware of when that is, because that's kind of when you're the most eligible to switch. And that's really when you talk to your provider about, all the different options and what might be best for you. So the final just kind of category that we don't have any specific systems to talk about, it's kind of next iteration, is that people always say, well, I've heard about a dual hormone system, one that gives you insulin to bring your blood sugars down, and one that gives you glucagon to bring your blood sugars up. We've been hearing about this for 20 years, and it is making its way forward. So where are we with that, Steve?
Well, I can just tell you one company that presented data in Amsterdam at this technology meeting. They didn't have a lot of patients, like 25 patients. This pump had 2 infusion lines. And as Jeremy said, you can really be aggressive with the insulin if you know you have breaks with glucagon. So those folks had no input at all with their own diabetes. They just went about their day, no inputting carbohydrates, and they got a time in range of 80%. And that's pretty darn good. And there's hurdles to overcome. And I know there's at least one other company working on the dual hormonal system. And so they have a long way to go. David, do you have any comments on that?
I'm excited about it for people that are really active, because I think these algorithms, probably one of their weakest points is exercise, and because people tend to go low. So I'm very curious to see how like a dual hormone system might benefit, someone who's really active, so.
Like Steve and I.
Yeah. And who knows, maybe they'll have a separate button for when you start getting a little bit low, like micro-dosing glucagon. I just had that idea.
Okay.
Because it's a separate cartridge and a tubing. So there you go.
All right. So that concludes kind of our information sharing this way. We've been getting a lot of questions coming into us from the different platforms. So we're going to go through, kind of as many as we can.
Yeah, we'll answer them as quickly as we can.
So this is a good general question. It says, I just updated my T-Slim Control IQ, and I started using the Dexcom G7. Do I still need to opt out when I go through TSA? So I'll give my answer to this. I think kind of travel and TSA and things like that with these devices has been like really overblown. Like whatever I'm wearing, I go through anything that they'll let me go through. The like regular metal detector, completely fine. The scanner will likely pick up, like the CGM on your body.
Or the metal holder that your pump's in. For sure, it'll pick that.
Well, I switched to one that's not metal for that reason.
That's good.
But like the scanner will see like kind of like inconsistencies in the contour of your body, basically. So it might say, oh, hey, you got something on your leg or on your abdomen. And then they generally just kind of wipe your hands with that thing and you're good to go. A lot of times patients will ask me for travel letters, which I kind of begrudgingly do, but you don't really need them. You really don't need them.
Quick follow-up there internationally. I know you do a lot of international travel. Is it different at all?
No, I would just say in general, TSA people around the world are slightly more familiar with these devices. Like 10 years ago when I was wearing some of the first Dexcoms, I literally got pulled in like a side room.
They made you strip.
Yeah, I had to
get in front of everyone.
Essentially completely naked. Well, like there was like people working on computers facing like the other way. It wasn't even like a real room. Anyways, it was weird.
Yeah, I think, you know what? Internationally, those folks that are the TSA equivalent, super knowledgeable, never had any problems.
Is Eversense covered by insurance? Yes. I mean, there's always caveats to what your insurance will cover, how much, things like that. But if you were eligible for CGM, then you were potentially eligible for this device.
And Medicare as well.
Yeah. All right, I'm just going to read these kind of as they come. So have most of the pump CGM providers lost significant sales in the last year via the substantial increase of use of GLP-1s by type 2s? So that's a good question in general. That yes, most pumps are for type 1s, but some type 2s use these insulin pumps. So I don't think their pump sales have been like dramatically affected because it is more on the type 2 side. What's interesting maybe is that you might say for type 2s, are they using less insulin in general? And what we're finding is that people with type 2 diabetes still ultimately like a good portion of them need to go onto insulin, but the GLP-1 is just kind of delaying that. So it's unfortunately not like to the cure point yet, but it's kind of delaying the progression of the disease essentially. All right, made you guys silent. Okay, is the iPhone app for Insulet Omnipod 5 available yet for G7? And you just said no, right, David?
Yeah, not yet. I'm hoping by summer, but I don't have any inside scoop.
Dexcom G7's temperature range is between 55 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit. When I exercise and temperatures below 55, I always get a brief sensor issue. Is Dexcom working on this, and is there a way to fix it? And you were talking about high temperatures.
Yeah, it goes both ways. So if I thought you were going to say you were in a hot tub and your numbers went high, and that could happen. And on the other end of the spectrum, they can get low. So I think Dexcom and all the sensor companies are trying to, wipe out these issues that occur with temperature changes, altitude changes, things like that. So.
Yeah, or just move to San Diego. If you're constantly below 50 degrees, get out of there. For crying out loud. I switched from a T-Slim G6 to the 780G. However, I find I'm frequently in manual mode because of highs. SmartGuard doesn't keep up. Is this a pump issue or poor carb counting on my part? I mean, that one's a pretty specific question I'd talk to your provider about. I mean, if you got to address the carbs and make sure that you're dealing with that first.
Something's wrong with your system.
Yeah.
because that's not the normal case.
Right.
So, talk to someone that knows how to adjust the settings on the 780G.
Is Simplera going to be vastly better than the Guardian 4? Well, in terms of usability, yes. Because like I said, the Guardian 4, it's a separate transmitter and sensor. You have to, I always think this is funny. You have to charge the transmitter in this device, but the device requires a battery. So I've had my charger run out of charge, so I can't charge my freaking transmitter. So that's all gone. It's all one thing, like a Dexcom or a Libre, much easier to use, just more consistent with kind of like current CGMs. In terms of accuracy, do you know if like it's better?
So my understanding is the sensor technology in the Simplera is the same as the Guardian 4, not the Guardian 3, the Guardian 4, which is markedly better than the Guardian 3. So if you're comparing it to the Guardian 3, much, much better. Sensor technology is similar to the Guardian 4, but the form factor, like Jeremy said, worlds better.
Yeah. And so the sensor I'm currently using, I find very accurate. It's not the accuracy that bothers me. It's all these other kind of like quality of life things. Can you comment on which systems can be obtained through pharmacy versus having to commit to a 4 or 5 year warranty? Well, this person probably works for Omnipod because the answer is Omnipod. You can actually get through your pharmacy.
Well, there are a couple. So Sequel Twist is going to be going through the pharmacy. That's one of their big things. And I believe Beta Bionics has some access through pharmacy.
They definitely do.
Well, I think that the question here is because like the Omnipod, you basically throw it away every 3 days. So you're not like locked into that commitment of a pump that costs like $5,000 or whatever.
Right. But Sequel and Beta Bionics have like somehow figured out a way to get it through pharmacy channels.
Well, that's awesome.
It's easy to find out, but I think everyone's toward it working that direction.
And for us, that's way easier too, because when you can order like something on our system when we're seeing patients on the computer, like you can't order things through these durable medical equipment. It's like antiquated faxes and things like that. So the more that we can do pharmacy, the better. I mean, thankfully CGM has gone that way almost like entirely, because not too long ago it was the same thing where somebody wanted a Dexcom, you had to fill out like paper forms and stuff like that.
And the big benefit to the pharmacy access is that you don't get locked into those 4 year warranties.
Any update on when Libre 3 Plus will be compatible with Tandem or when X3 is ready?
So X3, I have not heard any release dates anytime soon. So I think it's probably at least not. It's not. I don't think it's coming out in 2025.
What's X3?
Oh, that's just the next generation of the Tandem X2. So it's like the next bigger system, right? Because the Mobi is their new one, but it's kind of their smaller one.
Is it going to have a new algorithm, or is it?
Yeah, so I think theoretically it would have an updated version of Control IQ, and the pump hardware would be advanced. Because if you think about it, the pump hardware is actually the same that it's been for 10 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's their next gen pump hardware. Okay. What was the first part of that question? Libre 3 Plus integration.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it's got to be easy if they have the Libre 2 Plus integration already available, but I haven't heard a specific release date.
I have. Any day now. How difficult is it to switch pumps? Well, technically, it's not very difficult. You know, I could put on, take off my Medtronic and put on a Tandem right now and be cruising, but it's an insurance issue. So like we just kind of discussed, that you just got to make sure if your insurance will allow you to switch pumps and cover the cost of the new thing. If you want to pay out of pocket, you can do it tomorrow too. So it's really mostly an insurance issue.
And I think that really goes back to the whole pharmacy versus hardware thing. So that's where it is really nice with these pharmacy covered pumps, is that you can try them even if you're locked in a warranty, and then you just don't renew for the next month. So now that like almost half of them have a pharmacy access option, some of them are still through DME, you actually have a lot more flexibility to jump from pump to pump than you did 5 years ago.
Other than Medtronic, are there other companies that are making improvements to infusion sets?
Yeah, so I feel like these are being fed by like representatives from companies. But so Tandem is working on a 7-day extended wear infusion set called the Steady set. It's a startup that they acquired a few years ago. They finished their clinical trial, and I think they'll be publishing their data pretty soon. So that's another 7-day set I know that's in development. And
there's always been development of kind of like infusion set companies in general. You know, it doesn't have to be the pump company that makes it. It can be like somebody that just makes infusion sets that can be used with different pumps.
You got to be able to have the right lure lock for the pump.
Well, that wraps up our questions and pretty much our program there. So what we're going to do after this actually is record a podcast with Dr. on kind of the same topic that'll be released, soon too. So where we might go a little bit more depth on these things. But, we just did this a year ago. And the reason we had him back is because we love him, but also because there's been so many updates.
Yeah.
And it is crazy. You can tell that I don't know all this stuff. Because it's hard to keep up. Yeah, I know. I know. It's not just because this is just pure, rum.
We should say though that we have a blog. This will be online, so you can tell friends. You can watch it again, and you can ask any question, and we will answer them. Jeremy or myself or David.
Well, the point I was trying to make is there's been so many updates, which is a good thing for people with diabetes, and it's hard to keep up with because there are so many advances, so many companies that are invested in this space. It's growing, so the options are really kind of becoming pseudo endless with the combinations you can make, etc. So thanks for watching, because this information will be
plug one.
Oh yeah. So, and don't forget, coming up, we have our conference called ONE. ONE. That is our only in-person kind of event we do anymore, which is like the August 8th, 9th weekend around there. It's a Friday to Sunday at the Paradise Point Resort here in San Diego. It's an awesome space and location, but we have like 600-700 type 1s fly in from all over the country. We have a lot of good speakers, including David, who might be the only speaker without diabetes, because that is a pseudo requirement. So that he got grandfathered in because he's such a good speaker. But we have great talks, but then, such a good community of people hanging out at lunch and talking about, everything that we just talked about, or what do you do when you get a rash from your sensor, whatever it might be, in addition to hanging out at the bar at night, fun run in the morning, yoga, activities, things like that. So it's really kind of like a camp, an adult camp for diabetes.
Don't forget our band.
Oh, Eric's band, the Beatles band, or
Beatles
cover band. It's not actually the Beatles. Plays on Saturday night, and they're awesome. It's a good time. So go online, register for that.
Second weekend in August.
Yeah. So we will absolutely, all three of us will be there. So come say hi. And again, thanks for watching. Please make sure to like us on whatever platform you're using, or follow us. Those things actually matter and help us out to keep creating this content free for you guys. So thanks again, David.